Hello, everyone. I'm Aydoğan Vatandaş, the editor-in-chief of Politico.com. Today, I have a very remarkable guest, Mr. Naveed A. He is expert on international relations and especially Pakistani politics. Welcome to my podcast, Mr. Ahmed.
I'm honored. My pleasure.
Naveed, I know that you have been following the Pakistani politics for decades as a journalist, as a scholar. Can you please tell us what exactly happened in Pakistan? There has been a very interesting power transition. So some claim that it was a coup against the government. So what do you think? What happened exactly?
Well, the story goes back to Nawaz Sharif's time, when there were some serious issues between civil-military relations, and then Panama leaks came in, and Sharif family got implicated into that. They were actually found involved. There was a money trail. There was a proof, and then eventually the Yemen war issue came up. Mm-hmm. Pakistan was required by our old ally Saudi Arabia to chip in naval forces. And Nawaz Sharif, against the desire of military, he said, we will take the matter to court. And such a matter never went to court in Pakistan. It was to be decided at the executive level and at the strategic level. And stakeholders could decide, but they did not. And sending it to parliament clearly showed that there will be no such approval, because pro-Iran lobby was very strong, or anti-Arab, in general, anti-Arab, anti-West lobby. So that did not happen, and that further caused crack in civil-military relations. Meanwhile, this government got cases, faced cases in the court, which was proven against her, and then Nawaz Sharif had to resign. That is where the story begins. And Imran Khan was in the shadows. He was always protesting that there is rigging, the system is rigged for the rich, system is rigged for the dynastic families, system is rigged for those people who are feudals. So I am a guy who is very clean, who has come after 20 years of grassroots politics and struggle. So military had good feelings about him, and there were connections as well. And they started helping him. And eventually in 2018, he got about 140 odd seats. And then there was some other independents who joined. Then militaries, operators came into action to an extent, and they created some allies and coalition partners. Throughout, Imran Khan could not handle three issues. He could not handle and manage the coalition partners, because it was his arrogance, his pride, his self-confidence, and his self-righteousness that did not make him bow to any other. And he was a dictator as a cricketer. He is a dictator as a politician. Resultantly, coalitions started weakening, and people started openly starting talking against Imran's leadership in policies, and policies were only made by a few people. The second issue was the economic program or economic agenda. Whatever he brought was out of nowhere. It was not a homework, it was rhetoric. And when the government came into being, there was no serious plan. Who will head it? How will it go about? The finance ministers kept on changing and changing. And eventually, COVID hit, which gave him some respite. Management of economy became much better. Globally, every country suffered. Pakistan, being an agrarian economy, was not really affected as much. Our oil import bill reduced because there were lockdowns. So multiple factors really helped stabilize the economy, and we performed better than the neighborhood, which is India, Iran, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, etc. That's where the second term. The third aspect where Imran did not really deliver well was with civil-military relations. Mm-hmm. He took them for granted. He thought, they are in my pocket. They are going to support me every way. And my youth is with me, leadership is with me, and I will carry on deciding how to talk to Saudi Arabia. And they were one of our history's worst patch of relations was with the Gulf countries during Imran Khan's rule. There was a conflict with India in which Pakistan Air Force outperformed Indians, and we definitely made a major score there. But India soon after enacted a law which reversed the Kashmir's disputed status in its own constitution. And Pakistan could not impose any penalties on India, and Imran's government failed to manage that situation as was expected. Similarly, a relationship with Iran warmed very much, and it was being said that embassy of Tehran is closer to the Prime Minister house. Yeah, Tehran is closer to a Prime Minister house than GHQ or APARA, where intelligence agencies' headquarters are. So these were kind of, some symptoms that started coming in. And final culmination was that the same pro-Iran lobby in Imran's government and anti-West, chaos riding, trigger happy politicians, basically technocrats, started calling the shots, and United States came into the fold as well, especially because there was an invasion of Ukraine, and this government has hoped that by the end of 5-year term, we'll be completely switching over from United States and Arabs to Iran and Russia and China. While China maintains a balance between United States and its other allies, and it never imposes, but Russia is a different story. So Russia visit came at a very wrong time. The day Imran Khan lands there is the Ukraine invasion happening. Very bad optics, and he had to sit with Ramzan Kadyrov, the Chechen militant who is, right hand of Mr. Putin when it comes to managing domestic internal security in the Muslim majority areas of Russia. So there it came that you failed on economy, you failed to keep the coalition partners together, and you failed also to take along the main stakeholder military establishment with you. Mm-hmm. When it came that your numbers started going down and the opposition filed no confidence, you started hiding behind a memo that came from Pakistani ambassador in United States suggesting that Washington will be upset if Imran Khan continues to follow pro-Putin policies and go for alliance or some kind of rapprochement or visit Moscow at that juncture. So that was blown out of proportion, and military even today held a press conference and clarified that there was no conspiracy against Imran Khan's government from the United States, and there was no such thing as has been portrayed. But Imran is riding high on cheap populism. He's trying to flare up this hyper-nationalistic sentiment like MHP in Turkey. Right. That kind of line, purely ultra-nationalistic, more like Trumpish style of politics.
So did the Pakistani military make that announcement that the United States was not involved in that power transition? Did they say so?
There is, there is no direct denial of that. There is an admission that there was pressure to call off a visit to Moscow, but that has nothing to do with trying to destabilize Imran Khan's government. It was happening long ago. Masalan, for example, when Iraq war was continuing and United States and UK took over Iraq and they wanted troops from Muslim countries to go, and Turkish parliament historically decided that we are going to give airspace and land corridor, but we are not going to send any feet on the ground. At the same time, Pakistan was under equal pressure that why you should also join, and Pakistan decided to will not go that. So there was pressure in the past. There was pressure which we managed, and we could have managed this pressure as well. There was pressure also when China was building this economic corridor to Gwadar to connect to the Arabian Sea and the warm waters. And Pakistan said, no, we can't. That was never brought to the public notice because there was no political engineering required at that time. Right now, Imran Khan is losing all the cards. Your main strength was economy. You wanted to give jobs. You wanted to improve foreign relations. relations. You wanted to make Pakistan have a hub of connectivity, and you had promised human development, none of which happened as close to what others were doing. So eventually, United States relations with the United States were put on the line, and Pakistan is still in, grey listed in FATF for like over 7 years now, and it was not the time to bring into national politics your international relations, especially with a stakeholder like United States and the West.
So Naveed, it seems that the Turkish media is so upset about this power transition. So why do you think that the Turkish media is so upset about that change in Pakistani government? What kind of relations did they have?
I think this is based on, I haven't followed Turkish media because there is
no, that Turkish media is under the control of Erdogan government. So
exactly. So there are two ways to address that question. I used to write in a couple of Turkish newspapers in Turkish and also English. The issue is, are these news stories you are talking about, or are you talking about opinion articles? Erdogan was the first leader who
they call it a coup. I mean, they simply call this
News stories are quoting what Imran Khan is saying. There is a slight delicate difference. Tayyip Erdogan was the first head of the state in the world who picked up the phone and called Shahbaz Sharif and said, congratulations, we are happy to work with you. Our relations are never going to be under any kind of domestic or into any kind of cloud. So that was cleared. What's Imran Khan doing is Imran Khan is going to public. He is holding big rallies elsewhere across the country. So he is generating a lot of news, and he is keeping his rhetoric alive, like Trumpish style rhetoric. The Trump is in Florida once, and the next day he is in Ohio, and then he goes to Missouri, and he keeps on, pumping up a certain kind of narrative that elections were rigged. In this case, United States conspired against me, and they wanted to be out because our independence is in question, our sovereignty is in question. These are bold, big statements, and they are saying this is coup and all of that. So all of these statements of Imran Khan are showing up in TRT and Anadolu and other wire feeds you have. But opinion articles I haven't come across, editorials I haven't come across in state-controlled or state-affiliated or state-sympathetic media that are in favor of Imran Khan. But there is a problem overall with any media house that wherever there is news, wherever there are likes and clicks, and wherever there is noise, it will have to go. So many newspapers are actually copying and pasting whatever Kremlin's media is saying about its gains in Ukraine.
Okay, so you said that there was the relations between Iran and Pakistan was on the rise. But on the other hand, how was the relations between Pakistan and Saudi Arabia?
Pakistan-Saudi Arabia relations have no comparison vis-a-vis any economic partner of Pakistan. Saudi Arabia single-handedly has highest number of Pakistani families and human resource elsewhere in the world. Saudi Arabia is the largest provider of remittances into Pakistan. Pakistan is probably in Pakistan's list of buyers of petrochemicals. Saudi Arabia is by far number one with a huge lead. Similarly, Pakistan's exports also in the Gulf region are focused more towards this. So there is no comparison. In the case of Iran, if 500 Pakistanis are employed in Press TV or IRIB or their media houses, that probably will be the best number you can have, or maybe 1,000 Shia students studying in scholarship in Qom and Najaf and Qom and Tehran and Isfahan, all these religious institutions. The third thing, the linkage we have is of these mercenaries which are going into Iraq and also Syria, and they come back and they also fight in Afghanistan or whatever Iranian causes are. The fourth aspect or relationship is economic, but that is not solid cash economic, like transparent as Pakistan and Turkey will have, Pakistan with Azerbaijan or Saudi Arabia. Right. It's a relationship based on smuggling. So Pakistan's remote province called Balochistan, its economy greatly depends on smuggled fuel, which is very cheap and low quality from Iran, and some Iranian products. So that's the kind of relationship we have in reality. So the biggest impediment is that Iran and Pakistan have 1,200 kilometers of shared border. Land border besides the maritime border. Secondly, Iran has, hosted India, handed over one of its ports 70 nautical miles from Pakistan's international border for management and control, which might one day become a military base. That's what Indian expectation is. And the operational purpose is that we will shorten Afghanistan's access to sea by linking Afghanistan through a train and road via Chabhar. About 70 kilometer, 80 kilometer away from Iran's international borders is Gwadar. Gwadar is solely meant to facilitate Afghanistan and also link Middle East and North and Africa and the West to China, Europe to China, without going through South China Sea. That's the kind of dynamics we have. And for Pakistani military, it's very important that Iranian border is not very active against Pakistan, and India doesn't get a foothold there. So that's Iran's bargaining position, and that's what Iranians bank on when they mobilize their assets in the political and academia and economic fields.
We also know that Iran has ambitions to increase their nuclear power. And do you think, as we know that Pakistan also is a nuclear power, do you think that Iran is looking for some support from Pakistan to enrich their nuclear power?
This is a very important question. There are three layers to this question. First is, what is Pakistan's position if Iran goes nuclear? Because Iran will be going nuclear in the neighborhood of Pakistan, where we have two mighty nuclear powers, India and China. Pakistan being the third. And Iran becomes a nuclear weapon that can create a chain reaction of nuclearization. Definitely Turkey will go nuclear, no matter it's part of NATO or not. And Turkey has the capacity to go nuclear. Azerbaijan, which also feels threatened and has been having very rough relations with Iran, will have to consider what are its options. And we can talk about Gulf, UAE and Saudi Arabia. They will definitely consider, if our rival 200 nautical miles or less is going nuclear, what can we do? So that's a strategic dilemma of Pakistan, or strategic reality for Pakistan, that Iran should not go nuclear.
What about Turkey? What about Turkey? Do you think that Turkey is looking for some support from Iran about this nuclear issue?
Turkey doesn't need support. Turkey just needs one decision. I have my research is all about nuclear proliferation and nuclear strategy in the past many years. Turkey has all the technology to prepare a nuclear fissile material, which is 90% plus highly enriched uranium-238. The issue is whether Turkey wants to do that. It's just like Japan. Japan wants to go nuclear. It will be a nuclear power in 3 months. The other more complicated issue probably will be fabrication of nuclear weapon, how you put all the materials together, you wrap around explosives, you protect from radioactivity, and you enable the chain reaction to be so precise that it happens at the right time, in the right way, that the device gives maximum exposure. That is called fabrication of the bomb, the payload. That is where Turkey might need some help. I don't think so, because Turkish scholars, scientists I have come across in all fields, there will be no problem. Turkey hasn't decided it yet because Turkey doesn't face a threat from Iran in terms of military. Geography is a factor. The relationships have always been tense from Ottomans and pre-Ottomans. Iran and Persia has been a. Similarly, in case of Pakistan, there might not be a threat in real terms if Iran goes nuclear. But with nuclear comes so much prestige and so much diplomatic power, even if you are not UN Security Council's permanent member. So Shia Muslims in Pakistan will be becoming much more, which are mostly aligned to Iran, will become much more assertive. And Iran would try to, with the wealth of oil and gas, and strategic location stretching to Caspian Sea and the borders of China and Russia and also Turkey, it will definitely have a different kind of perception of its national power and projection. So that is where everybody, all the countries around, will come into a quagmire as to what to do. So on the policy level, Pakistan will never want Iran to be a nuclear weapon state because Iran is an NPT country, and if it leaves NPT, Pakistan will be nervous. The second thing is, yes, the cooperation might be possible at a different level, at a personal level, at a civilian level. People like Shiri Mazari, who is a human rights minister per se, has always focused on nuclear proliferation, and she's been one of those hawks who used to say that if we don't have any delivery system, we can put it on a C-130 and throw the nuclear weapon on India in the 1990s. So these kinds of people do exist. There could be some unofficial support of any know-how possible, but Pakistan will not provide any physical piece of technology or actual realistic knowledge to Iran that could translate into fabrication of weapon or processing of uranium. There was an instance in 2002, 2003, 2004, where was some centrifuges were reported to have reached Iran, but Iranians said they were trash, they were useless. And now Iran's focus has been over the past 5 years to produce the highest quality, most sophisticated, processing, what you call centrifuges, which Stuxnet that happened in 2012 could not damage significantly. Iran could easily replenish them. So there is this quagmire of Iran going nuclear, but at the same time, there is massive concern in the entire region beyond Gulf. Just the nuclear neighborhood of Iran will be alarmed. Iraq, Turkey, Gulf, I am not talking about that. So as far as Pakistan is concerned, our relations with Iran have too many limitations. And we have to consider those limitations when we are going away from Iran, that Iran can play a destructive role by teaming up with India, or by provoking, some elements in Afghanistan on the western border of Pakistan, and eastern border is already with India, which is always unpredictable. In the north, we have highest mountains in the world, and we have China, where access is very limited, only through air. So that's the kind of situation we were in. So Imran's policy was completely destructive when it comes to foreign policy, and that's where it was shy of keeping all the stakeholders in line. And when all these decisions or rhetoric was developed, or the threat so-called came from the United States, it was not shared with National Security Council before making it public. It was not shared with Defense Cabinet Committee. It was not shared with all the relevant stakeholders within the party. That is cabinet. So that's why Pakistanis are not actually believing it, but nobody is going to such details. People are seeing that there is a history of United States using Pakistan and trashing it like a tissue paper, like it does to many of its allies. Ukraine may be a NATO member, but an EU member, but Turkey will not be in the next 10 years, despite all the efforts and at one point showing all the indicators nearly acceptable. So these are the things that really have been building up. Imran and Iran both have capitalized on anti-Americanism that existed in Pakistan during the 80s, during the 90s, after the sanctions, after 9/11, and in the last decade. That's where all this, that's why you see all these big rallies happening people don't see Imran as somebody who supports Iran or who is supported by Iran or somebody who is favorable to Putin. They see him as a hyper-nationalist leader like Trump. Not even like Trump, smarter than Trump, much smarter. Right. And he is taking the cause of Pakistan forward, that we will never be used. We will become a superpower by just saying it, regardless of all economic indicators that are missing or technological skills that are missing or, bureaucratic manpower that is not there.
Naveed, last question. In the past, the Turkish Supreme Court was under the control of the military, and right now it is under the control of the Turkish government. So how did the Pakistani Supreme Court gain independence so they decide things, independently like this?
Well, Pakistani Supreme Court is not was never entirely under the thumb of military, especially
I said in Turkey. In Turkey, our Turkish Supreme Court was.
I'm explaining the same. Yeah. So Turkish model, Erdogan, whatever we say about him, he achieved a degree of economic success or managerial success in Istanbul. He becomes the prime minister. His party takes over, goes into by-elections, and eventually get rid of all the coalition partners, then deals with military, then entangles with judiciary, and then takes over. Right? In this case, you haven't delivered one term. You have so many coalition partners. You are in a fragile situation, and you are expecting the Supreme Court should listen to you like it listens in certain other countries. That's not possible. Pakistani Supreme Court did exercise a great degree of autonomy. Certain decisions were always controversial, especially when it comes to decisions which are merely related with politics or related with security forces or security establishment. And that has been a tussle between Pakistan's armed forces and Pakistan's military establishment and Pakistan's government, political government or parliament. This decision that you are saying, this was a cluster. This is sometimes 2 + 2 is equal to 4. It cannot be -6 or 20. It was just supposed to be like this. Everything that happened was meant that way, and the alternate option was not martial law. Alternate option was the change was legitimate. It was happening through numbers. The case that was being put forward was not related. The American conspiracy was not related with no confidence motion in a way as they are trying to say that Article 5 applies and all the opposition leaders or opposition movers are compromised because US wants it. So that could not be established, and eventually they had to go. So Supreme Court was normally when all the decisions are taken, you don't see 5-0. You see 5 judges are sitting 4-1 or 3-2, that kind of a split decision. And in this case, the question was so easy that without any manipulation through certain forces or some individuals' ill mindset, things could not have gone that way. So that's why this has happened. The enigma remains. Pakistan's military, Pakistan's political forces will continue to remain in a kind of battle of the right. It's sad for me to say, but I would say it, and as I say normally in public interactions in the universities, that Pakistan armed forces are the only institution which can read the pulse of people. Politicians do not. Politicians have colored glasses of their own interest and self-preservation, and they look it through that. So that's why, except for a couple of occasions, and those instances were corrected as well, military did not go too far into confronting its own people. It didn't confront politicians. Politicians have not been able to deliver. They are not mature. There is dynastic politics. Imran Khan has tried to create a cult because his own both 2 or 3 kids are not going to come to Pakistan and live or even raise a slogan for him. So this is going to be a kind of a cult. Now this is a challenge that you have military establishment has mastered the art of dealing and managing dynasties. do you manage a cult? How do you manage Make Pakistan Great Again movement when there is Make France Great Again movement like led by Li Pen, and there is another Putin doing it, Xi Jinping is doing somewhere, and Trump also did it and failed. That's a kind of a new challenge we are in. And in the emerging days, priority is not what's happening in the streets, but political affairs, economic affairs. We need to fix the economy. We need to get out of the FATF cloud. We need to improve our relations with the United States, which is the primary supplier of Pakistan's military spare parts. And our primary main technology comes from the United States or Western sources. And we do not want to go into any kind of sanctions. Plus, Pakistan's top, export customer is United States. What can you say about that? Your North Africa share does not match with East Asia. So where do you go? You are just locking yourself out or locking yourself in your own borders?
Naveed, thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time. Ladies and gentlemen, today we had a remarkable guest, Naveed Ahmed. He is an internationally acclaimed journalist and scholar, and he shared his insights about the Pakistani politics today. Thank you so much for joining us.